The impact of the second industrial revolution on women. More and more women started to find jobs. Most of those jobs were clerical jobs or office jobs. So that was a good thing. However, the bad thing was that 70% of the lowest income jobs were held by women. So there again, we see the dichotomy of the second industrial revolution. Yes, women had jobs, but most of the jobs were low paying. After Alexander Graham Bell invents the telephone, most of the women become telephone operators. So I would pick up my phone, I would call, a telephone operator would tell me who would I want to connect to, and then they would call switchboard operators. Then they would connect me to whoever I wanted to. By 1910, over 8 million women were out working outside the home. That was about 40% of all the women in the United States. Compare that to 1870, where it was only about 5% of women working outside the home in the United States. So again, we see the impact of the second industrial revolution on women. We also have another impact, children. So in this particular picture here, we see children working as glass blower, or at least the guy that's sitting down here as glass blowers. So dangerous because of the high heat that they were exposed to, but also the breaking glass that could cause harm. Another type of job that kids went into, probably the most dangerous job to work, period, was mine workers. So this kid here, he's about 10, 12 years old. Mainly dangerous with being a mine worker. You had toxic gases, you have explosions, you have slips and falls, you have cave-ins, and yet these kids were working there. It was dangerous for adults, much more for kids. And again, they were here for about $3 a day, more or less. And these last two, they're cotton mills. So the one on the left first, this is a 9-year-old kid working at a cotton mill in Georgia in the year 1910. You notice he has no kits as well, no shoes. So he has also been exposed to dangerous conditions. And then this one over here, more kids working also in the cotton industry, producing many goods. The cotton industry was one of the most profitable business. And again, workers or employers hire these workers, particularly women and children, because they pay them less. And the lower you pay your workers, the more profit you have for yourself. So that was, again, pros and cons of the second industrial revolution. Here's another impact of the second industrial revolution. I don't know if it's good or bad. Before the second industrial revolution, in 1860, about 25 million people lived in the country, and about 6 million lived in the cities. Fast forward to 1920, so in 60 years, 51 million people lived in the country, but 54 million people lived in the cities. So here we see a shift in where people live as well. And we also have this chart over here, the 5, 6 different cities here and their population in 1860, and then compare that to 1900, again when the second industrial revolution was going forward. The first one is New York, 1.1 million in 1860. By 1900, in about 30 years, 3.4 million people living in New York. And then in Chicago over here, it was 109,000 in 1860. By 1900, it was 1.6 million. Chicago becomes one of the places where people are working in the cattle industry. In New York, there was a lot of different industries there. So we again see, and this is a combination of people moving from the country, but also immigrants coming forward. Here's another pie chart. In 1880, I believe this is, let me move myself. 1880, 72% of the population lived in the country, 28% lived in the city. By 1900, 60% of the population lived in the country and 40% of the population lived in the city. So we see a shift there as well. In terms of employment, this is the total number of people that are working. In 1860 or 1870, there was about 13 million people that were working. And by 1900, we have about 28 million people. In terms of the income, in 1870, the average dollars per year was about $370 a year in 1870. By 1900, that was about 575. So about $200 more, again, because of the second industrial revolution. And then because you are making money, then you're able to go to these stores. That was another innovation. You have stores where you could buy a lot of items. So you went to these stores that you would go in and buy whatever it is that you needed for your store. Appliances, of course, Sears is known for that. And then if you couldn't go to the store because you lived out in the country, then you had a catalog where you could order many goods, masks, instruments, transportation, right? Even other instruments, and then shoes as well, toys, even firearms. So that was another impact of the second industrial revolution. For good or for bad, that's what it was. So we'll stop there for now.